So Ephesians 5, verses 1 to 2, as well as verse 15 to 17, goes like this. Paul is writing to the church in Ephesus, and he says, "Imitate God, therefore, in everything that you do, because you are his dear children. Live a life filled with love, following the example of Christ. He loved us and offered himself as a sacrifice for us, a pleasing aroma to God." In verse 15, "So be careful how you live. Don't live like fools, but like those who are wise. Make the most of every opportunity in these evil days. Don't act thoughtlessly, but understand what the Lord wants you to do." Be imitators of God is kind of the key phrase there that I want to kind of key in on there, and following the example of Jesus. I did a little research, as I probably should have. The Greek word in there for imitators is this Greek word called mimete. Mimete is this Greek word. For me, it reminded me of the word mimic. You know, mimic. You know, what do you think of when you think of mimicking? For me, I think of little children. For example, more specifically, I'm a father of a little 2-year-old, and she mimics things. This is how children learn. She mimics things. She mimics us as her parents. She mimics other people. She mimics things she sees in the world, or she mimics her favorite TV programs, for example. Over the Christmas holidays, she learned how to sing "Deck the Halls." That's her new Christmas song. I don't know why, but "Deck the Halls" is her favorite song. So she sings "Deck the Halls." She got a little microphone for Christmas, a toy microphone that makes your voice sound like an elf sound. And so she's singing "Deck the Halls," you know, la la la. I think she likes the la 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 part. That's probably her favorite part. She doesn't know what the words mean. In fact, I don't even know what the words to "Deck the Halls" mean myself. Not entirely, because it's such an old English language, right? But she sings "Deck the Halls," and she knows how to sing it, and she's mimicking us. She's imitating the words. She's saying those things, and that's how she learns. That's how little children learn, right? Beyond imitating and mimicking people, I've noticed that Karis will imitate things that she sees on TV. She has some of her favorite programs that we allow her to watch. One of them is Caillou. I don't know if you've ever watched Caillou, but for some reason, the story goes like this. We were driving in our car, Sharon and I, and we're kind of on a bit of a trip, and Sharon and I were talking and whatever, and then there was a time of silence. And out of the blue, Karis, a little 2-year-old in the back seat, she's never said this before, but she just goes, "So, what do you think?" We turned around, "What? So, what do you think?" And she picked this up off of Caillou. We didn't know where she got that at first, but later on, you know, as we watched her programs with her, we saw one of the characters on this program say, "Well, so what do you think?" And oh, that's where she got it. She didn't get it from us. She got it from her TV show. She doesn't really know what it means, but she got a laugh out of us, so she tries to say that more and more now so she can get a laugh out of us. She's a funny little girl. So she's learning to grow her vocabulary by mimicking the things that she sees. And you know what? That's okay. That's how we learn. That's how sometimes we grow. And even as Christians, it's okay to mimic the ways of Jesus. It's okay to imitate the ways of God, even if we don't fully understand what those ways are. It's okay to do that because we're still doing what is right, what is pleasing to God. As Karis's phrase is pleasing to her parents and makes us laugh, so by imitating God, that pleases God. Maybe he doesn't laugh at us so much, but maybe sometimes he does. I don't know. So that Greek word mimete comes with a definition of 3 kind of possible meanings. It means first either to imitate, or to follow as an example, or to strive to resemble. So we are told to be imitators of God. And verse 2 then gives us a launching point, again, of how that looks like, where Paul says, basically, live a life filled with love, following the example of Jesus, following the example of Christ. And he says, he loved us. He offered himself as a sacrifice for us, a pleasing aroma to God. He loved us, and he offered himself as a sacrifice. And so that's simple. Love others and offer yourself as sacrifice. as a service to others, to God. It's simple, and that's the way to live counterculturally. End of sermon. No, not quite yet. Not quite yet. Because first of all, what we need to do is we need to understand what culturally looks like, what living culturally looks like. Because we can't live counterculturally until we first know what the culture is like. We need to take time to understand it and get to the nitty-gritty of what it looks like. So for many, many years, North America, even now, is kind of known as the land of opportunity, right? It's the land of opportunity. In fact, when North America was first being settled, that was kind of the attitude that people had when they came to settle in North America. It's the land of opportunities, more land, more space, more opportunity to grow. Opportunity for what, though, is what we ask. What's the opportunity that they're looking for? Well, it's a type of lifestyle. The lifestyle that was sold to immigrants coming overseas into North America was this, is that if you work hard enough, if you put enough elbow grease into it, if you work long enough hours and produce so much, then you'll be able to have more. You'll be able to consume more. You'll be able to earn more, and so then be able to buy more. And that's what we call, actually, the American dream. Now, we're Canadian, sure. We live in a Canadian context, but we're really kind of an extension of that American culture as well. That American dream totally applies to our culture as well. So the whole idea is, hey, if I work hard enough for myself, if I go full out and, these early years of my life, I work hard, put enough elbow grease into it, and make lots of money and earn lots of stuff, and then I'll be able to buy more, and I'll be able to consume more. And our world really feeds into that. Our world feeds into that consumerism. I've had some conversations over the last week even about consumerism. But have we stopped to ask what the problem with consumerism is? First of all, the American dream focuses on two things. The focus is what? First, it's on material things. The focus is on acquiring more material wealth. And the second is that it's individual focused. It's not necessarily community focused. Primarily, it's individual focused. I can do it. I can go here. I can move to this town. I can move to this city, and I can work hard. If I work hard, I'll earn more, and I can use more. I can consume more, and I can be more wealthy, more powerful, more rich. It's all about me. It's individual focused. It's not necessarily God focused. It's not even community focused. It's about me. So there's the problem. And then when we talk about consumerism, have we ever asked then, again, what's the problem with consuming so much? What's so bad about buying lots of stuff? Initially, it doesn't sound like there should be a problem. Okay, I just have lots more things. But consumerism, we understand, and we get a really good concept of consumerism, especially around this Christmas season, right? The ebb and flow of consumerism is basically, you know what? The harder we work, the more we earn, the more we're able to consume. And so the more we're able to consume, the more we're physically satisfied. The more we're physically satisfied, then it becomes, again, this individual focus. It's all about us. It's all about me. It's not about necessarily working for the betterment of the community. That comes secondary. I think about if we're striving to consume more and more, then it follows that we are less and less concerned with sharing things with other people. If we're so consumed with consuming, then we'll be less consumed with sharing. And community demands sharing. You've probably heard those stats, the global stats, where 20% of the world consume 80% of the world's goods in manufacturing. Well, we're part of that 20%. This is the culture that we're part of. We're not part of that 80% who consumes 20%. We're part of the 20% who consumes 80%. And it's all this consuming, me, more, bigger, wealth, more, rich, And it's individual focused. It's self-focused, not community and God-focused. Also, if we look at our culturally, realistically, we live for a life of comfort. The desired end result of that American dream is a life of comfort. It really is. It's not about a life of hard work. Who wants a life of hard work for the rest of their lives? Well, no one's really aspiring to work hard until they die. No, there's this idea of the harder I work earlier on, the more comfortable my life will be later on. And again, initially we think about that. What's wrong with a life of comfort? What's wrong with a life of comfort? Well, if you want a challenging message on that, I can speak a little bit to it. But John Piper is a pretty popular preacher in the States. You might have heard of him. He gave a message a number of years ago called "Don't Waste Your Life," and he really challenges this idea of even retirement. And how, insofar as retirement is a way just to, I've worked so far, and now I just live for myself. I know a lot of retired people are great at volunteering, that's great, and retired people are great at giving back to the community and feeding back, and that's the way it should be. Retirement should not be about just living a life of comfort and ease for myself, entertaining myself all the time. And so there's that whole idea, should we live for comfort? When I go home, when I work at work, am I working so that I can go home and be comfortable and entertain myself and watch more movies, watch more TV, play more video games, whatever it may be? Or am I working so that it's part of being a part of the community? It's part of contributing to the community. It's part of, even in my time off, I work, but in my time off, what am I doing with that free time? Am I living for myself, for comfort, for ease, for entertainment? Because that's not the way it should be. We should be working to contribute, not consume. What's even scarier in these days is that there's this right of entitlement. There's this whole attitude that a lot of the younger generations feel about having a right of entitlement. If you look back historically, we're a number of years away from, say, even World War II, when that was the kind of last real time in North American culture, history, where the culture really had to work hard. There was an economic time where we had to work hard so that we could do well. But after that economic boom of the 50s and so on, we've had 3 generations at least of people who have lived not even knowing those hard times. And so as a result, we have a younger generation, even my generation and younger, of people who don't know that, yeah, you know what, there were times we had to work really hard to get where we are, to have all the stuff that we do, to have all these material things, first of all, but to have this freedom that we have and all the stuff that we have. And so this younger generation then starts to think, well, this is supposed to be the way it is. This is supposed to be the way life is. We're supposed to have all these things just handed to us. And admittedly, we have. Our parents, well, maybe not some of your parents, but my parents at least, who are in their 50s and 60s, handed a lot of stuff down to me. And for people who are younger than I, parents are handing stuff down. And there's a responsibility for parents, first of all, to learn to teach our children, the responsibility of hard work and, a good day's work and labor and whatnot, and earn your keep. And that's good parenting. But there's been a lot of not great parenting out there as well. You know this. And so the younger generation feels, hey, these things are my rights. I'm supposed to have a good life. They want to skip that step in the American dream of hard work. But that's the most important step. You need to work hard to get the things you want. But we're living in a time when people don't want to work hard. Good grades are a human right. It's kind of that way. And all these things are human rights. A good car is a human right. A good paying job is a human right. I should get paid $30 an hour for whatever I'm doing. Well, that's kind of the way it looks, and kind of the way the culture feels nowadays with the younger generations. So how do we fight that? How do we make sure that we don't get trapped in all of that? That's the way our culture is. Our culture promotes individualism. It promotes consumerism. It promotes entertainment. And it promotes striving for a life of comfort. But read again, hear what Paul says. In Ephesians 5, verse 15, he says, be careful how you live. Don't live like fools, but like those who are wise. Make the most of every opportunity in these evil days. Like he's saying, let's understand the world that we live in and the way that it lies to us and the way that the world deceives us. And we need to live properly, live counter-culturally. Because let's face it, we live in a world that always lies to us. It always deceives us. The world, Satan has influence, so much influence there that the world lies to us, it deceives us. We can start right here and just say, you know what? We know that the world is full of lies and that God's word is full of truth because God has designed us the way he has designed us. God has designed us the proper way so that we know how to live properly, the way that community ought to be, the way that we ought to personally live too in community. God's ways is truth, the ways of the world is lies. And we need to be aware. I think that's what Paul is saying here. Be careful how you live. Don't live like fools, but like those who are wise. Let's be wise to the ways of the world so that we can counteract that, so we can fight against that, so we can live the way that we're supposed to. Paul also says in verse 17, don't act thoughtlessly, but understand what the Lord wants you to do. So rather than consuming, we can be focusing on contributing. Rather than entertaining ourselves, we can be focusing on serving others. Rather than striving for a life of comfort, we can be focusing on working on the relationships in our life. Our Heidelberg Catechism asks the question, why are you called a Christian? And the answer goes like this. Because by faith I am a member of Christ, and so I share in his anointing. I am anointed to do what? To confess his name, to present myself to him as a living sacrifice of thanks, to strive with a good conscience against sin and the devil in this life, and then afterward to reign with Christ over all creation for all eternity. To strive with good conscience against sin and the devil in this life, and to present myself as a living sacrifice of thanks. That actually comes from Romans chapter 12. Romans 12, verse 1. Paul writes, and so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all he has done for you. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice, the kind that God will find acceptable. This is truly the way to worship him. Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. And then you will learn to know God's will for you, that which is good and pleasing and perfect. This is the New Living Translation. Some of the NIV, NASB will go, don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. It's probably how most of us remember that. So, that's the attitude that we should have. Remember again that Paul writes, you follow the example of Jesus. You know, you can't ask what would Jesus do. That's a popular quote. What would Jesus do? WWJDs. You've seen people with these bracelets and whatnot. What would Jesus do? Well, you can't ask what would Jesus do unless you first know what did Jesus do. His whole life was countercultural. Becoming the king of the universe, becoming the king of all creation was his goal. And we talked about his birth earlier, about how he did things that were so countercultural. Even the royalty of his time sought to destroy him. Herod killed all the boys in Bethlehem and the surrounding area who were 2 years and younger. But foreign kings, foreign wise men came to worship him when he was a little boy. That's countercultural. Shepherds came to worship him at his birth. The shepherds were the lowest of the low of the workers in those days. You know, you look at his ministry. Jesus did things so counterculturally. In the Gospel of Mark, there's this whole theme of secrecy. You know, Jesus would perform a miracle. He'd heal somebody, and then don't tell anybody what has happened here. Don't tell people who I am. And there's this whole idea of secrecy, and that happens so many times in Mark, as well as in Matthew as well. There's this whole idea of secrecy. You know, that's counterculturally. That's very countercultural. If I was to want people to, if I wanted to be king of the universe, I would want people to know, guys, I'm the king of the universe. Not keep it a secret. Don't tell anybody. I healed people. Don't tell anybody. Jesus also, when he sent out his disciples 2 by 2 to different cities and whatnot, he said, you know, if they don't accept you because of me, then shake the feet off your dust, which was a sign, which was a way that they would say, okay, you know what? Through with you. That's it. Done. We'll leave and move on to the next town. And now, if you want to be king of the universe, wouldn't you want everybody to be on board? Wouldn't you want every town and every city to be like, yeah, Jesus is the king? Rather than, no, you know what? Shake the dust off your feet. It's the weeds and the wheat. We're dealing with weeds and wheat. You know what? There's going to be weeds among the wheat. Let's deal with it later at the judgment. It's Matthew 25 coming up. Even who he hung out with. Jesus was accused by the religious leaders of hanging out with the prostitutes, with hanging out with the sinners, with the tax collectors, the people who were looked down upon. How are you going to build a kingdom? You're going to be king of the universe by hanging out with those kind of people. Even that's very countercultural. I'm even thinking, even in the time period that Jesus came, if you wanted to spread your kingdom as far and as fast as possible, why would he come to that particular time period? He stayed in one small kind of area. He only ministered for about 3 years in full-time ministry, doing his work, his healings and teachings. He lived in a random town in Nazareth, way up north in Israel. And people are like, what good can come from up there? He came at a time, people say, okay, yeah, he came at a time when the Roman Empire was at its fullest. And so there's a lot of communication and roads that could connect here and there. But the Roman Empire didn't extend to Northern Europe or Asia or Africa. Why didn't he even come now? Why not the Messiah coming now? With social media and the World Wide Web, he could get that message out instantly, and everyone would be able to know. But he did it his own way. He did it counterculturally. He did it at a time when, he did it in a little place, a little time, where he hung out with 12 guys and a bunch of followers who followed him. And he did it his own way, counterculturally, to the way that I would think of. If I'm trying to get my message out there, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to have a book signing. I'm going to put it on the web and have everyone find out about it. Put it on Facebook. Everyone will find out about it then. No, he did it in his own way, very counterculturally. Even when you looked at the Last Supper, he washed his disciples' feet. And there's so much we could say on that. But he served his disciples. He served the guys who were studying underneath him. And they were like, what's going on? They didn't understand it. He served. He gave himself as a sacrifice. There's even the quote that Jesus said. When he broke the bread, he said, "This is my body, which is given for you." All the times we say, "This is my body, which is broken for you." But no, it's not broken. It's given. This is my body, which is given for you. This is the cup that is poured out. These are offerings. These are sacrifices. Jesus was consumed with serving, with giving himself. He was consumed with serving people. Consumerism is take. Me. Serving is give. Jesus gave and gave all of himself, even on the cross. That's the example that Paul is saying that we ought to follow. We ought to give. Give more. Give. That's the key word, give. Give more. You know what's crazy? Jesus is king of the universe. He did it. He sits right now at the right hand of the throne of God. He did it his way, and he's king of the universe. So what does that say? Say his ways work. God's ways work. Sometimes we don't even have to fully understand them, but we're mimicking. We can imitate. It's okay not to fully understand it, but we need to continue to go, continue to follow, continue to have Jesus as our example. The attitude that we should have comes from Matthew 25 there, and it's the story of the final judgment. The sheep and the goats. You probably all know this passage fairly well. But Jesus teaches this. He says, when the Son of Man, referring to himself, comes in his glory, and all the angels with him. Then he'll sit upon his glorious throne. And all the nations will be gathered in his presence, and he will separate the people as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will place the sheep on his right and his goats on the left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you fed me. I was thirsty, and you gave me a drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me into your home. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you cared for me. I was in prison, and you visited me." And then those righteous ones will reply, "Lord, when did we ever see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink, or a stranger or naked, or ever visit you in prison?" And the king will say, "I tell you the truth, when you did it to one of the least of these, of my brothers and sisters, you were doing it to me." And then the king will turn to those on the left, and he'll say, "Away with you, cursed ones, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his demons. I was hungry, and you didn't feed me. I was thirsty, you didn't give me a drink. I was a stranger, and you didn't invite me into your home. I was naked, and you didn't clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you didn't visit me." And the unrighteous will say, "Lord, when did we ever see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick or in prison and not help you?" And Jesus says, "I tell you the truth, when you refused to help the least of these, of my brothers and sisters, you were refusing to help me. And they'll go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous will go into eternal life." In John Calvin's commentaries, he says, you know what? The list there is not a complete list. It's not a complete list, first of all, of the ways we should be doing. A lot of those things are charity, visiting, giving, serving. And it's not a complete list of how we ought to live. But Calvin also says that it's the attitude that we ought to have, the attitude of serving. Thomas à Kempis wrote a classic devotional book called Of the Imitation of Christ, which is something I've been reading through as well. And he writes on this passage as well. He says, you know what, you won't be judged by what books you've read or how well you've spoken, but by what you've done. And he's right. We're not going to be judged. We're not going to be judged at the final judgment by what books we've read, what we've learned. We're not going to be judged by what sermons we've heard. We're not going to be judged by what church we attend. We're not going to be judged by what denominations we've been a part of. We're not going to be judged by the school we've gone to or graduated from or the degree we have. We're not going to be judged by any of those things. Those things are next to meaningless in terms of the judgment. But we're going to be judged by what we've done, by how we've acted, by how we've lived, by how we've served and given ourselves up for God as an offering back to God. We're going to be judged by those things. There's an analogy that I've used before, especially at our youth group, a firefighter. Let's say you're a firefighter. Now let's say there's a fellow here. Let's call him, I don't know, Sam. Sam's a firefighter. So Sam says, "I'm a firefighter." And I say, "Sam, when's the last fire you fought?" "Oh, I haven't fought a fire yet." "Oh, so you're a new firefighter?" No, I've been a firefighter for a long time." "Oh, so do you have a fire suit?" "No, I don't have a suit. I don't really wear it. It doesn't fit me too well. It's too uncomfortable." "Oh, well, have you ever, driven the fire truck?" No, I don't like to drive the fire truck. I don't want to crash. I don't want to get in an accident." "So Sam, are you really a firefighter?" "Well, yeah, I'm a firefighter." Is he really a firefighter, though? If he doesn't drive the fire truck, if he doesn't fight fires, if he doesn't put the fire suit on, is he really a firefighter? You can call yourself a firefighter, but unless you act and live like a firefighter, then you will truly be a firefighter. In a similar way, if we call ourselves Christians, but we're not living in a way that is serving others, that is God-focused, that is visiting the sick, visiting those in jail, visiting those who are hospitalized, giving the poor food, giving the thirsty a drink. Are we really Christians? It's a tough question to answer because we'd like to say, well, yeah, I've given my life to Jesus. But James says, faith without actions is dead. It's useless. Faith without actions is useless. Now, there's some deep theological debate we could have there for sure. But the Bible speaks pretty clearly that we need to serve. We need to be little Christs. We need to follow Christ's example. We need to have actions with our faith. So, moving forward into the new year, what does this look like for us? What does it look like individually and corporately? I'm sure at tomorrow's service, as well as New Year's Day service, Dave will speak more to what that looks like in terms of moving forward and how we as a church will move forward into 2013. But I think that a good starting point is that we need to focus on serving. We need to focus on service, just as Jesus did. It's countercultural, but it works. And it's the way that God's designed us. Earlier I asked that question, how many of us feel like we can give up more for Jesus? And just about everyone raised their hand. So what more will you give up? What more will you give up for Jesus? How more will you serve Jesus this year? New Year's resolutions. I'm not a big participant in New Year's resolutions. As Sean was saying earlier, a lot of those New Year's resolutions are, I'm going to eat less turkey, or I'm going to lose some weight, or I'm going to give up Coca-Cola for the year, whatever it may be. Some of those things are pretty, I'm going to lose more weight, or whatever. They're earthly things. And they can be good things too. There's nothing wrong with those things. I never follow through on them. That's my problem. I try to set a goal, I try to set a New Year's resolution, and I fail. Inevitably, I fail. But I think that, I wonder if we focus not so much on ourselves, but focus more on God in any sort of New Year's resolution or any resolution going forward, that I think we'll be more successful. In a sense, if we focus more on God, first of all, we'll have a community of people who can keep us accountable to that. Yeah, we can have people keep us accountable to, losing more weight. I gained more weight over the holidays, so I can lose it after New Year's. But we can have people accountable for that. But when we have a specific kind of goal that's God-focused, I think we can have more believers around us to keep us accountable, especially family and close friends and small groups that we may meet in. Put God first. So I wrote down a few examples and maybe a framework of what sort of New Year's resolution you and I might be able to make this year. We put God first. I'm going to put God as the first word in every resolution. First, how about this? Maybe God will have more of my time for the purpose of deepening my knowledge of Him. Spending more time with God. God will have it. Or how about this? God can use my words to speak truth to my neighbors. Yeah, it's me doing it, but it's God doing it through me. God can have more of my money to be used for church ministry or sponsoring children in third world countries or helping the poor. God can do that. God can have that. God can take my spare Saturdays to serve the needy by handing out bag lunches to the homeless on the streets. Or God can have my spare Sunday afternoons to welcome in new neighbors or workmates to my house for lunch. God can have those. I think if we focus more on God and God doing things through us, then first of all, it puts us under God, keeps us accountable before Him, which is a good place to be, but it also keeps us accountable with ourselves as true believers, as true disciples. So living counterculturally, Jesus was the perfect example of servanthood. He was the perfect example of living in a countercultural way, but He made it work. And you know what? I don't know exactly how it works. I don't know all the specifics and the details of how living counterculturally works, but it does. I know that it does. And it's that whole word, it's that Greek word mimete again. It's the mimicking. It's the imitating God. It's the imitating Jesus that works. I don't have to understand everything about it. You don't have to fully get the idea of servanthood. But if you're practicing just being like Him, just being like God, being like Jesus, it works. So, may we be people who are imitators of God. May we be people who follow the example of Jesus. And may we offer up ourselves to God as living sacrifices.
May our homes be filled with dancing. May our streets be filled with joy. May justice bow to Jesus. As the people turn to pray. From the mountain to the valley, hear our praises rise to you. From the heaven to the nation, hear our singing, fill the air. May our light shine in the darkness as we walk before the cross. May your glory fill the whole earth as the water o'er the sea. From the mountain to the valley, hear our praises rise to you. From the heaven to the nation, hear our singing, fill the air. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.